Welcome to another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Frank Walker, Vice President of Government Affairs here at the Florida Chamber, and joining us today is Senator Jeff Brandes from Senate District 24. Senator Brandes, welcome to the program.
Thanks, great to be with you.
So you've been a long-time advocate for improving our bottom five legal abuse climate here in Florida. We do so many things right, our tax climate, our regulatory climate, our geographic advantages, but the real anchor holding down our competitiveness has been our lawsuit abuse. Tell us what you've got on the horizon this year on tort reform and where it all stands as we head into the back half of the session.
Well, I think anybody who owns a business is seeing more and more of this. Anytime an employee gets let go anymore, we're seeing more and more lawyers being involved in that conversation. We're seeing that obviously happen in the property insurance space, as we're hearing from insurers that a few years ago it was 5% of their claims coming in represented by counsel. Now it's getting closer to 25 to 30%. And the insurance industry, frankly, just isn't designed for that level of legal engagement as it stands today. And so it's very concerning to see overall kind of what we're seeing going on with the amount of litigation taking place in Florida, and we've got to begin to put some parameters on this issue.
So talk about your contingency fee multiplier reform bill. It's one of the unfortunate asterisks where Florida is one of the only states in the union that has this type of elevator for attorney's fees. How are you tackling that, and why is it something that could help not only lessen the impact from an expense perspective of litigation, but could drive Florida's competitiveness forward?
So, Florida really is an outlier here. There's essentially 49 other states, and the federal government have this rare and exceptional standard for contingency fee multipliers, which is when a case ultimately gets through the legal system, the lawyers for the plaintiffs coming back and saying, we want 2 or 3 times what our typical attorney's fee would be for this case, and they're getting it. And so that kind of throws the world off its orbit in many ways in the legal system, as well as for insurance companies and for small businesses that now get affected by this as their premiums rise or they're forced to pay these exorbitant legal fees. And so ours tries to kind of level the playing field here and set the standard as where it is in the rest of the 49 states and the federal standard, which is really the Scalia standard. He says, look, these fees were never designed to be the slot machines for the legal profession. They were really, we should go back to this rare and exceptional standard. Even Justice Kennedy, in his dissent on the legal case that has opened this whole thing up in Florida, said the legislature should address it. So we've got a bill that's, I believe, made it through the Florida House and ready to go for the Florida Senate.
Well, we appreciate your leadership on that issue. Another area that you've shown extraordinary leadership over your tenure is criminal justice reform. You hosted a panel with Sean Hopwood, a former convicted felon turned Georgetown law professor at this past year's Future of Florida Forum. One of the questions I often get is, why should the business community care about criminal justice reform?
Well, because when individuals get released from prison, they come back into the community, and we know that the one thing that keeps most people from recommitting new crimes is the ability to get a job in their community. And so what can we do in the overall job space to ensure that we're looking to hire individuals who have a former record and that we can get them back engaged in the workforce? It's so important that they be able to get a job and be able to move forward with their lives. They've served their time. They're ready to re-engage. We need to be focused on a criminal justice system that provides them the skills to re-engage. And so that's something that we're actively working on, to provide more education in the prison system, more literacy programs in the system, more trades in the prison system, so that when they get out of prison, they're ready to get a job and able to get a job. But we need employers to be proactively hiring.
So switching gears slightly, you've long been at the forefront of legislation that embraces disruptive entrance into Florida's economy, whether that's ride sharing or short-term vacation rental platforms. As you've said, you're for the frontier, not the fortress. What's the next great disruption on the horizon for Florida, and how is the legislature preparing for it?
Yeah, you're right. There really only is 2 kinds of legislation that comes through the legislative process. There's the fortress legislation, where people are asking them to build the walls higher and dig the moats deeper around their entrenched special interest. Or there's the frontier, which is asking to tear down the walls and fill in the moats and to open up the market to new businesses and new ideas. I think the next big shift, at least in the mobility space, is the shift towards electrification. I mean, I think you could see 15 to 20% of new vehicles sold in 2030 being electric, and we need, as a state, to be thinking about that. It's It's less than 0.5% of vehicles today on the roads. So we think that's really interesting. But I think if you step back and say, what's the big idea really out there for the next decade? It's really this idea that artificial intelligence in many ways is the new electricity. And it's going to hit every single industry like electricity hit those industries 100 years ago. And whether that's a discussion about self-driving cars or how does AI affect education, we already see it radically changing healthcare. All of these different conversations really are showing that artificial intelligence is the new electricity, and Florida needs to be prepared for that.
Well, we appreciate your partnership and certainly your passion for these issues. I think we're out of time. So to our viewers, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.